Hi, this is Thierry Samlal from PMML. Today I'm going to present to you the statistics for the month of October 2021 for the multifamily market in the province of Quebec. So it's been an incredible year. We've seen incredible volumes, price per door increases, compression of cap rates, incredible transactional volumes per month. For example, June, July, August, September were incredible months in the province of Quebec. And we're still in that hype for multifamily buildings. There's still a large appetite of buyers. There's still a lot of owners that are willing to sell their assets on the market. So that's maintaining a high market. There's a large confidence also in the Quebec market. There's a lot of buyers that are coming now from the rest of Canada, a lot of REITs, a lot of private investment funds, which have done purchases across the year, which have exploded the price ranges that we're seeing right now. A lot of major owners also have purchased major assets. So very interesting to see that the market still has that high volume. Now, transactionally speaking, this month, our volumes have greatly decreased of what was closed in front of a notary, in front of a lawyer, and what was registered in Quebec. Meaning, for example, in August 2021, our transactional volume, which was exceptional because of COVID, was at $574 million. In September, we dropped to $426 million. Now, for the greater area of Montreal, we're at $244 million. So all of the transactional volume has dropped, but that's due to the simple fact that we have, first of all, incredible volume in June, July, August, and September because there was a lot of transactions that were late. Because of COVID, a lot of people wanted to invest in multifamily real estate, and that jammed the pipelines. The financial institutions were not able to deliver their mortgage approvals with the same speed. The notaries and the lawyers were not able to close at the same speed because they had so many transactions to close in a short period of time. That caused a problematic also with the land surveyors, with the building inspectors. The due diligence periods were much longer. We had to extend many files, and all of that jammed the pipeline. So we had an incredible amount of transactions taking place in the mid-range of the year, so much that we surpassed the previous year only in the first two semesters. So it's normal that our transactional volume has decreased. Now, what you must know is right now we have a record amount at PMML of files which have accepted promise of purchases on them, which are in the due diligence period. And depending on the size of the building that you're buying, when you're in the due diligence period, normally you're going to be closing in between 3, 6, and 9 months further away in time. So, of course, a 6-unit does not transact as fast necessarily as a larger asset, depending on their financing and their structure. But what you're seeing now, the quantity of files in due diligence that you're seeing now, I could guarantee you that in a few months from now, you're going to see surges in volume transacted because all of those transactions are going to be coming out of the pipeline. So an incredible amount of transactions right now in due diligence. So it's still showing a strong request for multifamily buildings in Quebec. So very interesting. Now, all of the regional markets, when I'm talking about regional, I'm talking about Quebec City, which is, of course, a major market. I'm talking about Gatineau, etc. Trois-Rivières have shrunk in volume a bit. But the Sherbrooke market has surged for this month. And why? Because there was a major transaction that took place in Sherbrooke. Sherbrooke is a very linear market, but when you're seeing surges all of a sudden in a very linear market, is because you have major buyers coming in from time to time and bidding and buying larger assets at better prices, and they're helping to increase the markets in that area. Very good news for the owners. For the buyers, you want to keep an eye on that area. If you want to buy, start thinking of buying because you're going to see surges in prices in that area and the price per door increase. So it shows that Major players are coming into that market. And historically, what's happening, and normally in the Sherbrooke market, it was this closed market more or less. A lot of buyers from Sherbrooke were buying buildings in Sherbrooke, and they were between themselves maintaining the price level at a certain level. Now we have buyers coming from Montreal, from Quebec. We have major institutional players coming into Sherbrooke and saying, well, listen, I could buy an asset at a good price here, lower than the Montreal and Quebec market, and I still have an increase possible in price per door, and I could definitely increase my NOI on the project. So that's very interesting to look at that market. Now I would like to talk to you about my top 5. Top 1, transaction, Pointe-aux-Trembles. Pointe-aux-Trembles is a district on the island of Montreal, completely to the east of the island, very, very close to the eastern portion of the North Shore. And in that area, there's not that many apartment buildings, so there's a large demand for new build. And we have here a purchaser that bought a 72-door, 7-story high building, purpose-built. What's interesting here is the transaction took place at close to $280,000 per door, and which is much lower than the market, really, because if you want to purchase one of these buildings these days, you're going to be paying somewhere between $325,000 and $375,000 per door in that area. We're even seeing prices go up to $400,000 per door, depending on how deluxe the product is and what the location is. Now, the purchaser has over 1,000 doors, and mostly what that purchaser owns is value-add property. So 1950, 1960, 1970 type construction. Now we're seeing that purchaser getting interested in these newer builds. Why? It's less management to just add a new build in the portfolio. You're buying an asset with rents which are very high compared to the market. You don't have that many operational expenses, OPEX over time, over the short period of time coming up. It's easy to add this in your portfolio without having to displace your workforce to be able to optimize the asset. You don't have that many issues with the rent optimizations. You're working with tenants that are ready to pay high prices. It's just natural to go in that area. Also, in this asset, what's interesting is you have common areas, common barbecues. You have the amenities what a tenant is looking for these days. Also, it's close to all the commercial services. It's also close to public transportation. There's a train station close by. So definitely a nice transaction, but very typical of what you're going to see in the future. A lot of major owners right now that still are keeping their assets are turning towards new builds, and that's only natural over time. Why? Because it's much easier to manage and it's much easier to work forward. My top 2, we're talking about an asset of 56 doors, very well located. It's close to the Botanical Gardens, so it is close to the Olympic Stadium. If you visited Montreal, you know the Olympic Stadium is an area where the tourists go. It's very nice to live close to the Olympic Stadium. You have the Botanical Gardens, you have the Maisonneuve Park. It's a whole district, public transportation. You have metro stations bringing you down to downtown Montreal. It's a very nice lifestyle. So the seller that sold this building owns many assets of the larger type. It's a building where the heating is paid by the owner. So I'm guessing that the buyer is definitely going to be optimizing the rents because of that. The purchaser now, which is interesting, is that this purchaser is a group of people, and they've purchased a lot of small buildings over time, and now they picked up this larger asset. So it's only natural to see this in the market. They were able to capitalize by purchasing many small assets over the 2-3 last years, and then they refinanced, and now they're on the market. They're able to buy this larger asset. So very interesting, and very rare to see a transaction taking place close to 60 doors in the area. There's a lot of smaller assets, mostly 30 to 40 doors. And this went for close to $135,000 per door, which is a logical price in that area. It is also close to the P9 Boulevard. P9 is close by. And what's interesting with P9 is they made a quick bus system there, an express bus system that goes between the blue metro line and the green metro line. And that gives easy access for the tenants to the 2 metro stations to go to downtown Montreal. So the purchaser has studied the market and is picking up this asset knowing that definitely can increase the rents on the short term. So very interesting. Now, let's go to my top three. My top three, we're going to Saint Eustache, and I like to talk about the north end of Montreal. Why? Because in the north end of Montreal, there's a lot of purchasers that live in Laval, that live in the north end of Montreal, and they like to purchase close by. And there's a large base of those investors, and a lot of those investors have high volume of assets, and they have liquidity that they're able to punch back out on the market. And when they do that, they want to buy close to what they already own. They want to buy close to where they live. And right now we're seeing this because everything that's on the north end of Montreal, that's on the two east-west highways, which are the 640 and the 440, we're seeing large upscales in transactional volume. Also everything to do with the Highway 15 going to which is a south-north highway. We're seeing a lot of purchases taking place here. Here the transaction took place at close to $145,000 per door, which is in the high end of the spectrum for existing assets in the area. But what you must understand is the purchaser is picking up close to 115 doors at one address and is buying that portfolio. And when you're normally buying in the north end of Montreal, the portfolios that exist there are portfolios of different buildings in the same neighborhood, but not side by side, owned by the same owner. We're seeing this a lot in the province of Quebec. So, interesting to pay maybe a little bit more per door, say 3, 4, 5,000 over market, but you have one asset at the same place. There's definitely an upscale possible here. There's definitely a value add by buying one asset under one roof, having one maintenance team on location, controlling the market in the area. So interesting, and also here the asset is heated by the owner, so possibility of increasing the rents and converting the building. Now, top four, let's go to Sherbrooke City. We talked about it earlier. Here, there's nothing special about this asset. One thing though is that it's a major sale, meaning that 145 doors were sold one shot, and they were sold close to 100,000 per door, which is very interesting for the Sherbrooke market. Now, different buildings, nothing exciting about the portfolio because they're all brick, wood, walk up, no elevator, outside garage, outside parking spaces. What's interesting here is that it's a purchaser that sees the opportunity to buy several assets at the same location, one-shot deal, easy to manage, etc. So congratulations here to the buyer. Now, let's go to my top five. And normally every month I talk to you about the Quebec market, the Quebec City market, which has had high Skypes in volume all along the year. Now I'm not going to talk to you about this today. I'm going to talk to you about the Kuwaiansville market, which is a tiny market, which is on Highway 10. And Highway 10 is a highway that's between Montreal and Sherbrooke City, and we talked about Sherbrooke a little earlier. This asset here that sold, which was purchased by an experienced investor, and it was purchased close to $80,000 per door. Now we just saw in my top four, my previous top four, that the asset that sold was $100,000 per door. This one is $80,000 per door. It's $20,000 per door cheaper. If you're going to the Montreal, greater area of Montreal market, well, your prices per door are much higher also. So it was interesting for the buyer, which is very experienced and that usually purchases in the urban area of Montreal, seeing that this buyer that did his due diligence went in Kuwaiansville to purchase this asset. He did it for two reasons. First of all, this price per door. Second of all, he knows that by buying so much asset in a smaller community like this one, he's going to be controlling the rent prices in the area. He's going to be able to take his different buildings that he's purchased and make one a little bit more deluxe, rent it at a very high rental value, pick up the clientele 50 years and above, and then maybe go get another asset, just hike it up in value, pick up the families that are in the area, pick up the loners that are the single tenants, which I call them, which are mostly alone, living alone, living with one child, etc. Pick up those and just hike the rents. And what happens there is when you're controlling the market in an area and you increase your rents of $50 in all of your buildings, you're increasing the rental value of $50 in that area. Also, That area is very popular because I have a major asset that's for sale there that's new. And we have a lot of requests for it right now. So that same tenant that's looking at the market, that's seeing 2 rents at $50 more, that turns around and looks at that new asset that was just built, that's at top market value for rent per door, what happens? That tenant usually chooses one of those assets. And that's why the buyer purchased in that area. So I encourage you to look at the Sherbrooke market in your next purchases if you're in that market. So if we sum up here, October, the sales volume has decreased, but don't forget, well, we have an enormous amount of transactions in the due diligence period. So on paper, we have a decrease, but in reality, the multifamily market is still going as a speed train right now. So it's going to be a pleasure for me to see you next month. Have a great day and take care.